The final Transport and Infrastructure Committee meeting for 2022, number 826. We have a full complement of committee members, and we also welcome Deputy Mayor Councillor Gates, Councillor Hamill, Councillor McDonald and Councillor O'Neill as visiting members. We've got a fairly full agenda this afternoon with most items having some type of presentation. We'll just kick on off with attendance and apologies, we're fine. Leave of absence, we're fine. If I could have someone confirm the minutes from the previous meeting. Confirmed by Councillor Owen Jones, seconded by Councillor Taylor. All those in favour? That's carried. Conflict, no he's not. Conflict of interest declarations. I'm just going to go to Councillor Gates. I believe you have a declaration that you made us aware of.
Yes, I do want to make a conflict declaration on item 7.1, which is a closed session item, but I was in receipt of a donation from a company called Coastal Tipper Hire, and I'm aware of their land holding within the extractive industry area of the city. And so in an abundance of caution, I'm making a declaration. I'm not sure that their land is included in this decision, but this will become a matter of an ordinary business item ultimately for consideration by the council. But I would like to remain in the room due to my representation in that area over many years. And if my colleagues see fit for me to remain, I would like to.
Councillor Forster.
Madam Chair, I'm happy for that. I just wanted to clarify because I was chewing and I might have not have heard. Through you to Councillor Gates. So you're not sure that Coastal Tipper Hire may in fact be impacted at all?
I couldn't see them on the map, but I would think they'd have to be impacted.
All right, so
I couldn't see their land holding on the map, but
maybe
I'm aware of where it is.
Madam Chair, I can confirm for Councillor Gates that their holding is impacted, so it's a relevant conflict to bring up.
Okay, so I'm happy to move that Councillor Gates may participate in the decision despite the councillor's conflict of interest because the public interest is served with Councillor Gates's contribution as a long-serving councillor, having looked after areas of high industrial and extractive use, and as settling this policy position will have impacts beyond any mapped area. Does that sum up your contribution, Councillor Gates?
To you, Councillor.
Well,
I'm happy to second that, Councillor Forster.
thanks, Madam Chair. And just to talk very briefly at it. Well, what this does is it establishes that there is a conflict of interest, right? But what I'm saying is that no matter what the conflict of interest is, that the public interest is served by having an experienced councillor who's aware of the issues concerning industrial and extractive land use, and that notwithstanding her personal contribution, dealing with this policy matter will have an impact on the way we fund our roads program entirely, which impacts not only the mapped area, but all of us, because all of our roads budgets will be impacted by any shortfall that we might need to meet. So that's my position.
So that's moved by Councillor Forster, seconded by myself. All those in favour? Division,
Councillor Pauline Young, Councillor Owen Jones, Councillor Caldwell, Councillor Patterson, Councillor Taylor, Councillor Vorster.
those who are
Can't vote.
against.
I'm not on this committee.
Councillor Peter Young's against, yeah. And that's carried. Thank you, councillors. So we will go back to the agenda now. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So, yeah, 5 starred items, 5.1, 6.1, 6.2, 6.3, 6.4. Did we want it moved by councillor Taylor, seconded by councillor Peter Young? All those in favour? That's carried. Thank you. And we'll go to 6.5, which is the State of the Transport Network 2022. We'll welcome Mr Tilley for his presentation. And councillors, if we could jot down our questions as we go along, and we will ask them at the end. Thank you.
Good afternoon, councillors, and thank you for the opportunity to present to you today. Madam Chair and councillors, I think most of you know Alison O'Rourke, who's one of our senior members of Transport and Traffic Branch. Alison's overseen the preparation of the State of the Network report for this year and drawn together a whole lot of information. So any tricky questions? I'm going to look to my left. No, we'll collaborate and make sure you get as much accurate information as possible through the conversation. Okay, I think most of you have been through the process over the number of years, where each year we try to give a if you like, a acquittal, if you like, of how the transport system on the Gold Coast has worked, with the most contemporary data available across a whole cross-section of elements of the system. And you can see it, and hopefully you've had the chance to read through the report. It does become more and more comprehensive each year. I'll make some apologies for that, but hopefully it's all informative commentary and information that is meaningful to you for us to have this conversation today. We do try and cover, like I said, all elements. Really, the only recommendation is that we're noting the report, but obviously, as we said, we're more than happy to answer questions either as we go along and with your guidance, Madam Chair, or at the end. At the end, thank you. Okay, so population growth, and certainly we've seen the ongoing growth there. The stats this year are primarily sourced from an initial and I think a recalibrated 2021 census. So you can see there something around about the 634,000 people as a result of the 2021 census. That has grown a lot in the last number of years, so around about the last 10 years, about 23% growth in the city's resident population. That does equate to around, usually we work around about 1.8 trips per person per day. So as you can see there, in 2011, we were working around 2.9 daily trips per person, or 1.5 million trips in total. Now we're up to around about that 1.7 million trips, so an increase of around about 220,000 trips in that 10-year period. In terms of where that growth has occurred, no big surprises here, can I say, councillors? Certainly more than half of the population growth in the city has occurred north of what I guess we'll call it Helensvale, Oxenford, Maudsley type area, what we classify as Gold Coast North for the purposes of this exercise. More than 63,000 people increase, which is an increase of 65% in the last 10 years. We've had around an increase of around about 13% in the western sections of the coast and the coastal areas as well. So, and you can see some of the metrics there about the translation of that into the growth of trips using our network. And you can see there's a plus 150,000 trips in that 10-year window in that northern part of the city, which naturally materialises into some pressures on our transport system and also our land uses in the north as well. There's a couple of infographics, I think, that were included in the report, that we've tried to keep these infographics consistent with recent years. Again, I'll focus in on probably 3 of them there. I've mentioned about the population. Certainly what we've seen between 2011 and 2021 around the trips per person per day, we have decreased from 2.9, it went up to 3.1 in 2014, and then we're back down to around 2.7. That's a good metric around the number of trips per person per day. What we can see is that there's been a slight growth between the observed window between 2017 and 2020. Naturally, in that window and post that window, and 2021. Some of this data comes from the Household Travel Survey. The data, the time frame on that data is probably there's a little bit of legacy of COVID as a result of that survey. So some of the data we've got, and I know there's a section in the report which lists all of our data sources. We've tried to be very clear this year in citing explicitly what the data source was for each of the infographics or tables we've shown. Another good news story there is the weekly distance travelled. Again, you can see there we are reducing that. That is a good metric from a transport network management and transport planning point of view. And also the number of the weekly travel time per person. You can see there it's come up a little bit since the 17 to 20 snapshot, but it's certainly less than what it was in 2011 and 2014 as well. Our mode share targets, another one that we do keep a close eye on. Obviously, since the birth of the transport strategy in 2012-13, we are making an indent on the private vehicle mode share reliance, can I say. We know that we're making some change, some incremental change in public transport usage. We do have a lot of work to do in that space, but we're heading in the right direction. We have seen a positive movement in the cycling as a mode choice in the last few years, and over I think this is about the 6th or 7th year we've done this report. We have previously reported that there was a bit of a flatlining of cycling. I think, again, coming out of COVID into what we might call a new norm, we have seen an increase in cycling, and I think there's a bar chart in the report which might show shortly as well, which shows that both for recreational purposes but also for other trip purposes as well. And we are still doing very well in the mode share for walking trips as well. Again, walking trips and the way in which we present some of the active transport metrics can sometimes depend on the interpretation of some of the questions from the survey. And people might walk to catch public transport, they catch public transport. Those walking trips aren't necessarily captured. The primary mode of transport for that trip is recorded as public transport. So sometimes there's a lot more. The first mile, last mile of many trips is often via feet on the pavement. Road network, we've tried, and Alison's team has done, a great job this year in presenting some of the information in hopefully as consumable way as possible, and looking at a little bit more of the information or the meaningfulness behind the data, the raw data, which we're getting richer and richer in the network intelligence space. This image looks to show a comparison, if you like, between 2021 and 2022, where we look to see whether there were typical volumes using our road network, based on the large amount of sensors we have in our system nowadays, either through the signalised intersection network or via the Bluetooth sensors that we've deployed throughout the network as well. And you can see there, in 2022, there were no days, up to the second week of October, which was when we produced this report, that we were in excess of 15% higher than we were in 2021 on the commensurate day of the week. I assume this is clearer in the report, I know, than what is probably on the screen. It might be a bit easier on the screen behind me. What we can see there is that there were a number of roads that, as a result of, can I say, road network evolution, that you've seen significant growth, and some as a result of just pure growth in the network. You can see there, Stanmore Road. We have done some schemes over the years, as you know, in Stanmore Road. That is growth based on industrial land and residential land growth in the north there. You can see Wardoo Street as well. Wardoo Street's an interesting one. I put that down to growth on the surrounding parts of the network where we do have a redistribution. Historically, Wardoo Street and Cotloo Street and one or two other streets in our network have, they're not, some would call them lazy links, but sometimes there is the ability for them to grow in terms of their demand over capacity. So you can see that Wardoo Street growth is starting to be, Wardoo Street capacity is starting to be utilised through that distribution through the network. Salerno Street, we know that the benefits provided from the Olive Capri initiative has induced some growth on that work. That's natural when you do finish a major construction project, where previously, in the previous year, vehicles were probably avoiding that part of the network. This year we've got the new scheme in place. There is an attraction to use that because it's a new piece of very good infrastructure. Old Coach Road, we know there, again, it's a slightly lower base from a whole number point of view. What you can see there is that naturally there's a bit of a redistribution of traffic from using the M1 in that part of the city as the M1 has gone through that construction phase as well. The state network, and I'll just caveat this, you can see the state network, the most recent data we're able to collect from the state was 2021. So we've done a different 12-month time slice there. And you can see the growth on Labrador Carrara Road, sometimes called Currumbara Road. whereby we've had a fair bit of growth there. Again, slightly lower base than some of the other links there. The M1, as you can see, the slight insert table here to the left of the screen, a lot of growth all over, particularly in the north, particularly in that central section around Nerang and Wurundjeri there. This is this is one of my favourites, from my nerdy point of view, where we've got some great images. I think on page 61 of your report, where Alison's team is starting to really look at one of our key performance indicators for road network performance away from road safety is around network reliability and the ability for users to be able to have a reliable journey time along these sections of the road. So it's one that certainly from a corporate point of view we're going to be reporting on more regularly and more consistently around how long is it taking people to travel along these major sections of what I would call some of our major roads, some of our arterial links. And as you can see there, hopefully the way in which we've presented it is easy to interpret. Obviously the teal being this last 12 months, the watermelon being the previous 12 months, and you can see there, so the lower the standard deviation is, so the shorter the vertical bars are, the better. It means there's lower type of variation in travel time. And obviously what we're trying to do is move from a slightly longer watermelon bar to a shorter one in this year. And you can see in the most instances, there's a couple there, Uwalpa Road westbound, as we know the issues around exit 49, which is currently under reconstruction. There's a few there around Gold Coast Highway southbound as well, where we know that we've had in the southern part of the Gold Coast Highway under our jurisdiction, where again there are network elements there that are very difficult to optimise as a result of things like light rail. But by and large, this is the PM peak. You've got the AM peak and PM peak in your reports. By and large, we are moving in the right direction in this space with regard to travel time, but also consistency of travel time as well. We've included in the
Last information we got, it was the second busiest road in the city. So how does it miss something like this?
Through the chair, so the major part of Foxwell Road has since been demained, and we're focused on.
Sorry, it's not the main part of Foxwell, it's a tiny part of Foxwell. It's just.
Through the chair,
But it's the traffic volumes on it that I don't understand. It was second to the Gold Coast Highway at about 44,000 vehicle movements when we last had a report put before us, and all of a sudden it disappears from the state of the transport network. I don't understand.
Through the chair, we can certainly get some information on the city's section of Foxwell Road, Councillor Gates. We did consciously, the busiest part is the section to the west of Finnegan Way and Shipper Drive, which is now the state control, the Coomera Link Road, I think it's called now. So certainly we can grab some information, I'm sure, between now and full council, Councillor Gates, if that's all right, to see what information we can find and the trends.
That's fine, I know that's the busiest section, but it's because it's coming from the other end. Like, it can only come from Pimpamar and Amity and all those streets all the way out to Coomera Waters. It doesn't just appear on Finnegan or Shipper. There's very little traffic coming through Shipper.
There's through the Madam Chair, I know from personal experience, there is a lot of traffic entering Foxwell Road at that roundabout at the moment, and George Alexander Way as well. You're right, there's a lot of traffic entering further to the east as well. That node there is certainly of interest to now the department, but us from a one network point of view as well.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. Just can't.
Not at all. If it don't mind, I can take the action. We'll get some information, what we can, about Foxwell Road and the trends between 2021 and 2022. I think I was up to this slide. We have included in the network report this year some case studies. Again, we're trying to do more and better in this, what we call the post-project benefits realisation space, around making sure we quantify the benefits of the projects and the investments we make as a council to make sure that we are able to communicate with our constituents that the hard work and the investment of money and time was worthwhile. And I don't need to repeat some of the percentages there, both this and I think 1 year prior we reported on the Sundale and Waterways Drive project, where we've achieved well into double figures worth of travel time benefit during peak times and throughout the day as well. Freight trends, we've spoken to the committee and council a couple of times this year about freight. A lot of those the pieces of commentary and conclusions made about the freight task on the Gold Coast certainly still stand. I'll say it's probably one area where we'd like to become a little bit more data rich, certainly across ourselves, the department and the federal government. There is room for improvement across all levels of government and working with industry to make sure that we are collecting the right data and converting that into meaningful information to inform our investments. We have improved things in the last 12 months. I think as the report provides commentary on things like the Way in Motion trial, which I'd like to think we can roll out further to collect some meaningful information about the trends within the city's freight system. What we can see off this slide, though, is that there continues to be growth, particularly in what I would call the micro freight task. Obviously, the micro freight that first mile, last mile style freight task, where we know we have an occupation of curbside space, we have pickups, drop-offs. It does consume parts of the transport system that we need to make sure we can evolve with to make sure we are providing some of those. I'm sure all of you, and I've spoken to a number of you in recent times around the polite requests we have from our community members around space for commercial delivery vehicles in some of our high activity centres. So certainly we're not ignorant towards those trends. Road safety, I think you may have seen, I think it's page 71 of the report. There are some positive metrics and sometimes not a particularly happy space to read where we talk about fatal and serious injuries on our network. Certainly some of the numbers that we've seen, albeit the data for the Gold Coast at the time of production, bless you, was up to around I think mid-September this year. So we still have a little bit of the year to go in that space. We know there's been some incidents on our network in the last few weeks. But in large, and compared to Queensland and compared to Gold Coast, if I look at the city roads, there's various ways I can slice and dice this data. What I've tried to present to you is as factual and meaningful information as possible to say that what we are doing is working, and what we'll continue to do is invest in safe infrastructure and safe campaigns and safe projects that make sure that our road users aren't unnecessarily taking risks, and if they are taking risks, then there's a forgiving roadside environment for them to not be seriously injured or worse at our network. Parking, again, a highly emotive topic. As always, what we try to do is deal with some of the facts that we have available to us. We are becoming, like I said, more data rich in this space. Our sensor network, which we continue to expand, does provide us very good level of quantitative data around duration of stay, occupancy, etc., and so on. It is sometimes hard, and I do this as well, like all users do. It's hard to look beyond, the front door car park in peak time. There's certain parts of the city that it's very hard to find a car park in those peak times at the front door to the destination you are going to. What we do know through our sensor network is that holistically across some of the areas within the city, we are in that sweet spot of around 60 to 80% occupancy, which is the target. We've said that through the previous city parking plan and this most recent one as well. That's our target. It's a good use of infrastructure, it's a good use of space, but it should mean that customers are able to find a space within a reasonable amount of time without a huge degree of circulation in the network. Interestingly, one trend that has, if we are post-pandemic, one of the trends that has continued is that around that much higher than pre-COVID demand for short stay parking. 30 minutes or less parking in our activity centres. Again, that's meaningful for us to say, do we have the right mix of supply in our activity centres to meet what the customers are asking for in terms of supply at the moment. I mentioned before about active transport, active travel with walking. Some interesting takeaways here, and I will say, and we've interrogated this further through I think through this report production and verification process, where it looks as though our pedestrian volumes are coming down. We have checked that. There were a few anomalies with our data around the walking, the pedestrian demands through some of our active transport counters. We've since attended to that. So there is an asterisk, if you like, next to some of that graph towards the lower left of the screen there. What we have seen though, and certainly the household travel survey data to the right of the screen there shows that certainly the journey to education, as we call it, and journey to work data for walking has come down quite a lot based on that household travel survey data, with the proportion of those people who are walking doing more so now for social or recreation purposes. Again, I put another asterisk, if I can get how many asterisks I've got in my pocket, but if I can put one there next to that household travel survey data. It was collected in 2020/21 financial year. We were reasonably fresh or reasonably post-COVID there as well. And the sample size, can I say factually as well, the sample size for the household travel survey is less than 1,000 houses. We are going to work with TMR to see how we can expand that sample size to make it more meaningful and statistically relevant later in this financial year, I think early in 2023, to make sure that we can verify and increase the reach of that household travel survey data. Cycling tells a similar story, and what we can see there is the consistency around I think there's about 26 bars there, the fortnightly oscillation of demands along some of our, I think we've got 18 or so counters throughout the network, complemented with some of the data that we take from the on-road cycling through signalised intersections as well. And you can see they're fairly consistent, not so seasonal, obviously it's very weather dependent, active travel, active transport. What we can see through the household travel survey data, again, quite an increase from 2017 to 20 in that social and recreation space, but also in work, journey to work as well. A little bit less in journey to education, but again, metrics, it's insightful information, albeit, like I said, I caveat that by saying the sample size for the HTS is a lot lower than what we'd like it to be at this point. Our bike share scheme is going very well. Customer satisfaction is very good. We have over 700 bikes now in the system. The one area where I think I may have said this last year, apologies, I'm repeating myself, I think this is a big area of opportunity for us with the electric assisted system, which should mean that people of all abilities and all fitness levels should be able to cycle a little bit further on average than 1.5 kilometres. That's traditionally more of a non-electric assisted type of typical distance. I think there's an opportunity for us to work with our provider to see whether we can attack that market of new users in that 5 to 10 kilometre cycle range, to attack that metric around journey to work and journey to education, particularly tertiary education, for the Lime Bike Share scheme. Public transport, certainly can I say, I'll use the term somewhat loosely, the post-COVID public transport metrics. You can see there the vertical bar chart to the right. We are still lower in total terms than what we were pre-COVID. There is still a return to public transport occurring. Certainly the groups the governances that I sit on, all the trajectory is positive. Bus numbers are coming back. They're not coming back as quickly as what light rail numbers have come back. Light rail numbers are getting healthier and healthier by the week. And certainly some of the initiatives that we have proposed as a city to partner with the department, when we get them started, they will certainly bear fruit, and certainly the push that light rail future stages will have in this space as well will help push that percentage of mode share north as well. Travel demand management or travel behaviour change program, whichever I want to call it, it does make a difference, and hopefully those who've experienced through your schools and your division things like the Active School Travel program. Again, we're reaching around about 30% on average of the school community moving away from private vehicles into public, active and public transport, sustainable modes of transport. Certainly some of the schools would range between sort of 15 and about 55%, I think, with some of the metrics for the schools that have just completed the program. We've got 8 new primary schools and 3 new secondary schools into the program next year. But our travel demand management program is not just about active school travel. We've certainly, post-COVID, it was very difficult to do a great deal of travel demand management with workplaces and with the community, and even with some major events. During that COVID phase, we're re-ramping up the other elements of our active travel program at the moment. And certainly there's a few use cases around where we're using, there's an example I think we've cited with Robina TAFE in the report, whereby there are willing partners who are wanting to do their bit to partner with the city to really inform and influence the way in which some of their customers and staff and whatnot are attending workplaces. And what we're doing is partnering with the likes of the Department of Transport Main Roads and approaching things like this mobility as a service concept, where we think we've got some legitimate use cases within the city, where we have willing partners, we have local champions, we have infrastructure and the soft and hard infrastructure in place where we might be able to make a big difference in this realm of influencing travel behaviour in a positive way, and doing so by embracing things like technological advances and whatnot. So watch this space. It's certainly in 12 months' time, I'm standing up here saying we're about to do this and I've done something wrong. I think within the next 12 months, I'd like to work with a number of you to say, look, we did this and this is the effect, the positive effect that that's had. I think it's the final slide. The forward look, naturally, I've alluded to a number of things. We are, with very much your support and your guidance, we are doing well in this space. The metrics that I've presented to you today, and I summarised today, and some of the information that I've shown to you in the report, we are making a difference through the investment in our transport program. We need to keep doing what we're doing well. We need to keep investing in things like the road network, the active transport network, the public transport system in partnership with the department. We are about to enter this new advent of this allocation of capital framework, the prioritised investment approach, which I think is a great move, whereby we can provide really consistent prioritisation across our various transport system components. We are seeing a rapid advent of transport technology. And I used that example a few moments ago, whereby I think we need to play in this space. We need to be active and a participant in this space. And one thing I've learned over the last number of years, local government has a big role to play in this space because of how close we are to our customers and the understanding that we have of what our customers' needs are. We are absolutely seeing mobility as a service, as a concept, but as an action coming to life. The work that I've seen recently in South Australia, they have a mobility as a service app that I would love to see whether we can get something similar on the Gold Coast, or certainly in South East Queensland. There are more electric vehicles and there is more movement in that connected and autonomous vehicle space globally and nationally and locally as well. There are, and you've seen one of the pages of the report, there are some major infrastructure piece of transport infrastructure that will start appearing in the next couple of years on our network, be it light rail, be it Coomera Connector, be it the M1 interchange upgrades. We need to do our part to make sure that we have a complementary system of investments, again with your guidance and support, that we can make sure that people can, we can use things like the road network as it is intended to be used. Interregional trips are done in the arterial network, local trips are done on the local network and not vice versa. And the forward look as well, we can't be ignorant. We need to do our bit in this very early phase, I think it's called the foundation phase, to make sure we are thinking ahead, and through our 10-year programs of infrastructure investment, that we do have one eye on things that are happening regionally, things like the Brisbane 2032 Games. So that is it's a thought bubble for us at the moment as we think about what our 4 to 10-year capital investment program is. Thank you, councillors.
Thanks, Matt. Great report. I'll go left to right, so I'll go to Councillor Owen-Jones first.
Thank you, Councillor Young. On page 72, where you had the infograph for parking in the city, the car spaces surveyed, were they a combination of both metered and timed, or just metered car spaces?
Through you, Madam Chair, on both.
Would it be possible to get a graph for the metered car spaces to see what the turnover was? And my question is actually in an area like Southport, where you can drive through in the middle of the day and there's a fair, in my observation has been, there's a fair degree of vacancy in regards to the on-street car parking. I'd be interested in seeing whether or not there's anything that the city could be doing in that metered space in regards to try to encourage more people to be using the on-street space. Does that make sense, Matt?
It does. Thank you, Councillor Owen-Jones. Through you, Madam Chair, absolutely. I will double check. I've got a feeling some of the numbers there, the numbers that I've shown, also may include some non-time, non-metered spaces as well. So there might be a third tier of the surveyed information there as well. So I can certainly get the cross-section of it.
So I think my understanding of what we're trying to achieve from metered car spaces is the turnover in an appropriate time so that it stimulates people coming into the business areas and spending money. And clearly in an area like Burleigh, where you've got 80% type of occupancy, that's an indication to me that the metered spaces are achieving exactly what they set out to do. And then I look at an area like Southport and wonder whether or not there is some work that we can be doing through the metering that would naturally encourage more people to come in and shop and not discourage them from being in Southport. And so I've just written a note that Southport and even Surface and Bundall are all below that sweet spot that you spoke of in your presentation. And is that something that we could do maybe dynamically in those business areas to try to encourage more people to come in.
Through Madam Chair, absolutely.
If I may, that work has just been done for Southport. So a study of, and it will be changing quite significantly how that, I don't know when that is to be presented and finalised, but the work of that study has been recently done.
And I hope, just to build on what Councillor Patterson's comment, I hope we continue to demonstrate, if you've got some ideas for your local areas where you want us to have a look at an evidence-based alternative proposal around curbside management and in cities council parking management, then please reach out to us. We've got a good team. We've got good access to some good data nowadays. So if you'd like us to investigate something around along those lines, either from a very local point of view or from more of a centres point of view, then we're very very willing to work with you in that regard.
Whether or not the timeframes indicated on that figure 13 came from the state or where they came from, because so the Coomera Connector, for example, completion late 2024, I would have thought they'd need to start it before we get to 2024. The Gold Coast Light Rail Stage 3 operating by 2025. I don't know whether or not they are realistic timetables or not.
Through you, Madam Chair, with respect to the Coomera Connector, we are getting our update for the first update in some time, Councillor, on Thursday afternoon, what we call the partnering committee. We will find a little bit more. They are moving along with that project. There is activity on site, as a number of you will have seen, around the Marine Precinct at the moment. Their published information will tell me that they are looking to complete Stage 1 North in 2024. That's still what they are referring to us. We might get an update on Thursday. If we do, I'm certainly happy to update the council. With regard to Light Rail Stage 3, again, their published operating time is still 2025.
And you mentioned earlier the Coomera Link. Is that just the linkage from exit 54 back to the Coomera Connector, or have they changed the name of the Coomera Connector?
Through Madam Chair, so the Coomera Link Road has now been gazetted, so it's essentially Foxwell Road from exit 54 to Shipper Drive roundabout, down Shipper Drive to the northern portal of Coomera Connector Stage 1 North.
Thank you. I think I am for the time being.
Thank you. I'll go to Councillor Peter Young then.
Matt, one of your graphs separated active travel, but it only, I beg your pardon, it just looked at cycling, whereas with the active school travel scheme, you identified cycling as opposed or separate from scooters, and I just wonder if our cycling assessment might include or could include in the future those other personal modes, scooters and electric skateboards. There's a proliferation of those, and they're certainly meeting a need.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair.
Make sure we're capturing that.
You're absolutely right, Councillor Young. So certainly in the last 6 to 12 months, with the evolution of the PMD road rules, the changes to the road which came in 1st November, we're looking to collect better data around not only numbers but use, can I say, classification, speed, can I say, on some of our roads. We're looking to enhance the ability of our active transport counters to provide us with that slightly more granular information like we could do or can do. For example, with the speed awareness devices, the active transport counters we've had in the network for the last couple of years are a little bit, can I say, the technical, we need to upgrade some of them, and there are some devices that are available, as Alison and I found out recently, not particularly expensive, which can give us a whole lot more granularity to that data. We're looking at things around school zones, around the mix of users and multimodal users and speeds around school zones, but also around some of our primary active transport networks based on the proliferation, can I say, of different user groups at the moment around there. So absolutely we will.
Yeah,
in 12 months' time, I'd like to be able to disaggregate that further, yes.
Thanks, Matt. I think that's the right term, proliferation. It's just been an explosion of usage of those modes, and I think that'll continue.
Yeah.
You mentioned in the report there's about 8,500 electric vehicles registered in the city. That consists of all sorts of hybrids and plug-ins and all sorts of stuff, I presume. What percentage of the entire number of registered vehicles does that represent? Any idea, or can you give us that information?
Through Madam Chair, I'd certainly love to look into that information to provide to you, Councillor. I don't know off the top of my head, I beg your pardon.
Thank you. And thirdly, a little bit more particular, I've been promised that we're going to be investing in some corridor studies in the next few years, for several years, and there doesn't seem to be any live action on that. In fact, I think we're about 12 months behind, at least, on that proposed schedule for several corridor studies across the city, including one that's dear to me in Binstead Way and Gavin Arterial. So I'm wondering where they sit in our planning, please.
Through Madam Chair, we certainly do have a program funded through our operational budget of area studies, corridor studies. That same budget centre does try to cover a large amount of investigations, sometimes as a result of petitions. We've presented one or two here in recent times. We do have a program of the corridor studies in line with the anticipated intervention timings. So some of the corridors that we know we might need to have an intervention on in 5 to 10 years, they will appear in that sort of next 2 to 3 year time frame. I know we've made some commitments to undertake some detailed area or corridor studies for a number of divisions. We'll keep trying to do the best we can with the operational, human and fiscal resource we've got to try and tick off that list as soon as we can. There are some that I know are absolutely needed. There are some that on face value look like they're needed sooner rather than later, some which I think we can do some early work on to verify that maybe they're not a year 1 priority, they might be a year 3 priority. But we'll keep working with you. If you'd specifically like us to investigate a certain corridor or area beyond what we've already spoken with you about, we can certainly build that into our proposals for the operational budgets for 23, 24 and beyond.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Peter. Councillor Taylor, then Councillor Vorster, then Councillor O'Neill.
Thank you. And through the Chair to Matt, thank you. Just in relation to the street parking, does that just include street parking, or does it include any of council parking? Again, Transit Centre, Cube, Broadbeach. I think we've got one in another one in Southport Beachcomber. Does it include those, or does it include them?
Madam Chair, my understanding is it's council control parking within a certain a certain study area, if I can put it that way. Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't include private car park.
So just to be clear, I think your question was, does it include the off-street car parking like Bruce Bishop?
Correct. So we've got Beachcomber, we've got Cube. So there's other council car spots. Does it include those, or just on-street when we talk on-street? So I think we've got one in Southport
Just the
as well.
on-street, just the on-street sensors.
Even like Alex Black and whatnot. Didn't do Alex Black, the surface car park? Yeah. We did or didn't? Okay, sorry, I'll retract that, beg your pardon, Councillor. So it's on-street car parking spaces. We certainly have some metrics around the off-street. Obviously, we don't put the sensors in some of the off-street spaces like Bruce Bishop. We have sensors in some of the off-street spaces like Alex Black and whatnot. But we'll certainly clarify that if you don't mind post-committee.
Thank you. Just follow up. And if we could find out how many do we actually have that aren't on street? So I know Surfers, Broadbeach got a couple. I know Southport. So it'd be interesting to see over the whole of the city how many car spots we do have outside on street. Thank you.
Councillor Vorster.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I just had a few questions, and Matt, I'm not sure if you have a mind to go to the relevant slide or not. But we were shown a diagram of some typical high volume trips across the city. I think this is one that might have showed the trips across there. Okay, well, first of all, I'd regard Robina as a southern part of the Gold Coast. Anyway, but Matt, my question really relates to how we're capturing or classifying these trips. Like, for example, does a trip become a I'll put it, are we capturing the traffic volume on that particular road and attributing it to that road? Or when we are looking at traffic data, are we attributing volume to an origin and a destination? Or both, if that kind of makes sense.
Through you, Madam Chair, predominantly the former, Councillor Vorster. So predominantly it's a total volume. In some instances where we've had, I think we presented the Koala Park traffic study a few weeks ago, where we do a slightly more granular piece of analysis, we do capture some origin destination data. It is resource intensive, can I say, to capture origin destination data. Sometimes we can do there are ways, can I say, there are ways that we are learning where we can capture some OD data in a slightly more macro sense.
Yeah.
Again, that's an area where I think we can invest some time and effort into in the next little while to give some snapshots of origin destination analysis as well.
So, Madam Chair, I'm not sure if it was through this committee or it might have been through planning, but the city had entered into a commercial relationship with Optus to essentially get Optus to provide us with an overview of where people were coming from and where they were going. And because they were dealing with potentially tens of thousands of customers, we could make some statistically robust conclusions around how people are travelling where and at what speed and what have you. I just wondered whether we had repeated that body of work or sought some updated information post-COVID to try and understand whether there has been an internal relocation of people within the city after COVID and because of the housing crisis, which may have some structural impacts on where people are coming from and where they're going, and therefore what's happening on our roads. So have we got some updated data from Optus?
I might throw to Alison on that one if you don't mind. Madam Chair.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, Councillor Vorster. We are actually working with our counterparts in Smart City with their DSpark data. So we're looking to analyse that data in conjunction with our traffic volume counts to understand impacts of things like construction projects like the Gold Coast Light Rail 3, and also understand where we can utilise that data for OD analysis as well. We also have our Bluetooth data, which we're also investigating whether we can use that for OD.
I mean, my general observation is that coming out of COVID and because of the housing crisis, a lot of people who are renting, which can represent up to, between 45 and 55% of households in a particular area, there's been a lot of churn. And people, I know in my community who used to live in Varsity Lakes are now living in Highland Park or Pimpama, for example, but their kids are still studying at Varsity College, and where they could once use active transport to get to and from school, they are now in an unenviable position of having to take base trips. And I'd be very interested in seeing a before and after to understand whether social and housing changes have impacted the demands on our transport network, because we might be throwing a lot of money at active transport infrastructure around schools, for example, but if a school population has declined because people have been squeezed out of the local rental market and they're now coming from Pimpama or Stiglitz or Wongawallan, that might force a little bit of a rethink in terms of the way I think we prioritise our spending. Could you just provide me with some comments, Madam Chair, through you to Matt, around the whole e-scooter thing? So I get a sense from the Mayor's public comments that he has no appetite, and perhaps the Council has no appetite, to look at a e-scooter trial in the same way that other jurisdictions have. And that's fine, that's not today's decision. But I do see more people using e-scooters than ever before, not whizzing down the Surfers Paradise foreshore, but office workers and even tradies using e-scooters on 50-kilometre roads in lieu of a bike or a car. Have you got any sense, Madam Chair, through you to Matt, whether e-scooter use has kind of plateaued, or are there more people contemplating using e-scooters instead of motor vehicles? Because there were some questions about e-scooters in the survey. That's what I'm asking.
Through you, Madam Chair, in terms of numbers, like I said to Councillor Petty-Young before, we'll get some better data around demands. My perception is consistent with yours, Councillor Vorster, that there seems to be more of a different, different demographic of users than what there was 12 months ago. We, as a transport industry, and as a city and as a transport system manager, are in a better space now than what we were 12 months ago around the regulatory framework in this, the work that the department has done with the input of our road safety team, a lot of input from our road safety team, around the ensuring that the users of those more contemporary modes of transport, but also the other users of the transport system who share that space with those users of the contemporary modes are as safe as possible. 12 months ago, I wouldn't have said that to you. Since the 1st of November, and I think there's been a bit of media on this as well, we are in a safer space legislatively, as long as the legislative components, essentially the Queensland road rules, are able to be administered by the respective jurisdictions, which I think is an area for clarification at the moment.
Right. Just moving on to the travel time slide, which had the box graph. Now, when I see a graph like this, I normally expect to see a box and whisker graph, which will show me the extremities and then, the spread, either standard deviation plus or minus. Could I just get an idea from you, because this isn't a box and whisker graph, is the upper and lower bound the maximum and minima?
Through you, Madam Chair, to Councillor Vorster. Thank you, Councillor Vorster. This is the first time that we've used this graph in this report. Initially, it was a box and whisker graph. However, we took out those outliers because that's exactly what they are. Sometimes when we collect this data, we have outliers and it kind of skewed the results. So we felt this would be a better representation, but happy for feedback to improve that in future reports.
Well, my feedback is that more information leads to more fully informed decisions, and perhaps it's worth taking a brief moment to explain to all councillors, including myself, how to interpret the box and whisker graph so that we're furnished with as complete a picture as possible. Because I look at my lived reality around Marquerie Street and Robina Parkway and all the rest, and I can see, 80% of the problem displayed on the screen, but there are material impacts during those outliers that nonetheless need to be addressed through, better planning or infrastructure investment. Just to capture that would be good. Just on this corridor stuff.
So just on that, sorry, what percentile or does this represent?
Yeah.
Just to close
It'd probably be a standard deviation, I'd expect.
Just explain the upper and lower range.
Yep. Through you, Madam Chair, to Councillor Caldwell. The data that is collected represents about 40% of all vehicles on the road network. So those outliers are very, very minimal. That would represent the highs and lows of the speeds. So we get ridiculous speeds. At some points in the middle of the night, we'd remove those.
So, but it could be that. I mean, is it one standard deviation that spread? So it'd just be useful to see maybe not two standard deviations. Well, yeah, let's say two standard deviations where you've got an extra bar either side, so that we can get a better sense of what the curve might look like, right? I'll show you on a piece of paper.
Madam Chair, it's a representative dissection around what could be considered as the normal range based on the thin horizontal line in the middle is the average during that time period. And I'll take Councillor Vorster's question on how many standard deviations we've shown there. It basically shows that this is the usual operating environment of these corridors. The left-hand Y axis there basically shows that during the time, so I'll use the one that's closest to me, eastbound Ashmore Road, usually it's around about 110 seconds per kilometre during eastbound during the PM peak.
So, Madam Chair, through you to Councillor Gates, essentially, if that bar shows you what the average speed somebody would be doing on that road segment between 3 p.m. and 4 p.m. And the section above the bar, sorry? Well, I'm going to get, that's my next question. That's my next question. But anyway, the average is the bar, and 20% of people will travel up to the speed in the top half, and 20% of people will travel as low as the bottom of that second box. But anyway, here's my other question. Madam Chair, through you to Matt. Why could we not use kilometres per hour on the y-axis? And
because that left one equates to about 32 kilometres.
And Parkway got it to 45 kilometres an hour. So I just think that's critically important that we use numbers that represent our lived experience as road users and that the community can understand as well. So I know Robina Parkway has got a 70 kilometre posted speed limit. Only because I've crunched the math can I see that, on average, during 3 to 4 p.m, people are doing 45 kilometres an hour on a 70 kilometre road. And what would be really good, apart from having a box and whisker graph instead, is for the posted speed limit to be showed on the top and for kilometres per hour to be showed at the bottom, because that is actually a better indicator of how stressed that road is. Because there's no use in saying, say we had a column for the M1 that, hey, good news, people are travelling at 50 kilometres an hour. Most people are travelling 50 kilometres an hour. It's not a good news story because we would expect that most people can achieve 100 kilometres an hour for that category of road. So it's not a
No, I appreciate the feedback. I know previous feedback that other entities have received was around the translation of the average speed limit into a travel time. So there are various, some users prefer time because time is a measurable commodity.
Yeah.
Speed, you then need to translate the average speed into the distance to a travel time as well. So we might be able to show both.
Through you, Madam Chair, to Matt, with all due respect, travel time makes sense to me as a councillor when I'm thinking about the overall time it takes me for my trip. What is my time travelling? But this graph, to my mind, serves the purpose of indicating whether people are achieving a good speed, travelling at an appropriate speed on their way to wherever they may go. Now, it could be that this graph presents different information value for you as a city officer than it does us as a policy maker, but my assumption is that we would like to see it as kilometres per hour with a posted speed limit for our purposes. And maybe we need 2 slides, one with travel time, one with a post.
Feedback very welcome. I think could I offer it's beneficial to show both, if you don't mind? I think we'll take that.
Too easy.
For next year, thank you.
Yeah, sorry if I can, Madam Chair. So travel time reliability is one of the key measures of the council plan. So I think the team's intent was to start to articulate that, but absolutely take the feedback on board and we'll add both in.
So I just want to ask a question about the data that underpins this graph, right? So Robina Parkway from the M1 to Gooding Drive is very long corridor. But in the morning and in the afternoon, there's only a certain segment of that road that becomes completely congested and unworkable and an absolute productivity killer. And that's the section between Cheltenham Drive and Laver Drive. There's lots of queuing to get onto the M1. So when we do look at this travel time across the corridor, are you looking at an average speed across the entire road, or have you chosen a specific geographic location on the road, or 2 locations, in order to make some inferences about the whole, if that makes sense?
Through Madam Chair, in short, Yes, we've taken sublinks, can I say, of the corridor, which are of interest to us, and hopefully we can see there they are meaningful. We've got metrics around a lot of sublinks. I'll use perhaps Uwalpa Road as an example. The further east we go, we become slightly data less rich because there's no signalised intersections out there. So we've tried to get some compare. Can I say they're not the same length in distance as far as I'm aware, but they're to compare the performance between 2021 and 2022. The other reason, just quickly on the travel time versus the average speed, one of the reasons why average travel speed was being less used by industry, that's not consumable by members of the public. An average travel speed of, say, 40 kilometres per hour seems low. It's not during peak hour, as many of us know. It's quite good during peak hour, but it doesn't take into account delays at intersections where naturally you may have 60 kilometres an hour in one sublink, but you're actually at 0 kilometres an hour or 5 kilometres per hour on approach to or egress from intersections along some of the sublinks as well. That's why we've used, and industry is tending to use travel time as a metric because it takes in link and node intersection.
So in, let's call it the most high-profile sublink or segment of that Robina Parkway, westbound, I probably travel at 4 to 5 kilometres an hour for the better part of 20 minutes on that road in the morning. Now, I appreciate this is in the afternoon, 3 to 4. So I just think we need to be very careful when we're showing travel times on big corridors, because I think the average might overwhelm the very pronounced congestion and sort of travel time snarls that we might have. I think it's just getting lost. So anyway, that was my question on that. Just 3 other very brief questions. You mentioned road safety as part of the state of the network. Now, a little while ago, we had a road safety plan, and you might recall that was workshopped. We were promised at the time a suite of tactical road safety measures that councillors could use to try and address some road safety issues in suburban areas. So things like rubberised speed humps that could be temporarily dropped into an area rather than constructing big, expensive concrete jutta bars, right, for lack of a better word. It's probably been a couple of years, and I still haven't, as a local councillor, been provided with a suite of traffic calming and road safety measures to address the frequent requests we all have, including like your chicanes and your what have you. So you feel free to take that on notice, but I think road safety is not just about the number of crashes we have, but it's also responding to community concern.
I'll take that one, Matt, through you, Madam Chair. So we have definitely been working on those underpinning guidelines. The traffic calming policy was one that was decided as part of the One City policy review to be held off, but the actual standard and guidelines are there, Councillor, so we will absolutely be able to provide them to you.
On parking catchment, sorry, Madam Chair, I did as you asked. Hopefully it avoids others asking more questions. We looked at Burleigh and Palm Beach, for example. Love those areas. I just wondered, when we surveyed parking demand and we came to these figures, did you focus on CBD areas or did you look at the whole of the suburb? So I really have no sense of what the utilisation is for Burleigh and Palm Beach if I don't know what the catchment was that was assessed in those areas. So were they largely the commercial areas or was it the suburb at large which achieved around 64% of utilisation?
Through Madam Chair, the supply numbers do give a bit of an indication around the catchment. In large amount of cases, and I'll say generically, it's mostly the core activity centre, if I can say, plus the immediate fringe where we do tend to have this spillover into the way when the provisions around the management go paid to timed to nothing. That's sort of what I would call the fringe of the core activity. So that's the area we tend to survey by default.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you have it available, I'd be interested in seeing what those maps look like. I mean, having had a good long chat to Councillor McDonald about this, I know, say, the side streets of the proposed light rail stage 4 are somewhat away from the commercial area, right? But nonetheless have high utilisation, and I just want to make sure that we're capturing some of what that utilisation is when we're making general policy positions on transport. Like I went to Tally Creek the other Sunday, I had to park 3.5 kilometres away in front of some poor person's house, well away from the Palm Beach CBD. And I'd be interested to see whether those streets are captured in that demand analysis. Lastly, the household travel behaviour survey. Many years ago, before I was at council, my door was knocked on, and I completed the survey. And I thought that's interesting on reflection now, because my door was knocked. So when the state government carries out their survey, how are they reaching into people who live in apartments and townhouses, if at all? And I just wonder whether, if they're still doing the door knock, they might be missing a huge cohort of people who might be dependent on public transport and roads but are not contributing to the data set.
Through you, Madam Chair, it's a good question. My understanding was a combination of door knocking and phone calls. The department tends to do a lot of random phone call engagement questions and whatnot. We've had people in our team, in our project team, who lived in apartments who've been door knocked as well.
Yeah.
Admittedly low rise, can I say,
yes,
rather than high rise. But
yes.
I wasn't aware that it excluded a certain land use type.
Okay,
The sample size is small, I'll say, councillors. We're trying to get some skin in the game to improve that.
Sure, and when we're looking at a whole city, we only need to achieve about 695 samples in order to get a pretty robust thing. But we need to stratify those results in order to make some really good calls. And if they're not reaching into the high rises and the medium rises along the Gold Coast Highway, for example, we've got no way of really understanding how those communities are responding to public transport investment or making changes around their behaviour. So if we could interrogate that issue for the state, that'd be useful, and I'll shut up.
No, not at all. It's great feedback. Through Madam Chair, I think, like I said, we're working much more closely with the state for this next round of HTS household travel survey collection. So I'd like to think we'll have a little bit of skin in the game around the specification for the methodology, can I say, to make sure we've got a good demographic cross-section, geographic cross-section as well, land use type cross-section. So we'll certainly, I think, if not through this report next year, if not before, we'll be able to give a little bit of a deeper dive about that methodology as well.
Thank you, Councillor Vorster. Councillor O'Neill.
I think I'm probably going to be a little bit quicker. Just through Madam Chair to you, Matt. I know that in the report you mentioned how popular the Ocean Way is and the shared pathways, and I also noted that you're waiting for some clarification through DTMR about the new rules about personal electric devices and speeds and stuff. But I mean, the first weekend that came in, Coolangatta Police made their way down to the Ocean Way to check on speeds, but it's going to be difficult for them to be checking on speeds if there's no signage. So is part of the clarification who's going to do the signage, what the signage is going to say, where it's going to go? Is that still in the mix, or is that up to us because we actually manage the Ocean Way as such, as far as signage goes?
Through Madam Chair, thanks, Councillor O'Neill. It's a very good question. Some of those important details are still being worked through the reference group. If I can liken it to a contemporary or traditional road environment, the legislation is set by the Queensland road rules and through the state. We would then probably apply the line marking and signage like we do on our local road network. So my assumption would be that would be the same there. So there'll be a combination, like there is on a road network, of regulatory signage, advisory signage, some educational and awareness signage, which we're working on some of the pathway etiquette piece of work at the moment to make sure there's no can I say, user ambiguity about how these systems are supposed to be used.
Any sort of ballpark figure about time frame that would happen? Because I know I will get asked at the next Bellinga Neighbourhood Watch meeting that I'm going to, because they all live along that Ocean Way.
Yeah. I'll take that one on notice if you don't mind, Councillor O'Neill. I would hope very soon, and it should have been in place before November 1 would be my suggestion, but obviously we're past that point now. If it's not prescribed as to when that time frame and responsibilities are, if it's not defined yet, then I'll make it a point to define that, and I'll communicate with you and the committee pre-council if that's okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor O'Neill. Councillor Taylor, and then I think we should be done. No, Councillor Gates, down.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In relation to the parking survey, is there a time frame when that was actually done? And also, was there any view in relation to developments, the time frame of actually doing the survey, and in relation to developments in particular areas? Because I will be interested in the map and, yeah, understanding the time frame of when that was done.
Through Madam Chair, my understanding is this is an annualised rate, so it's an average occupancy throughout this. Wasn't because they have the sensor data, we've got big data coming from the sensors, that it's an average rate essentially across the majority of the 12-month window. Where we do not manual counts, but more detailed granular counts, that's when we stick a timestamp on them to say we got more information beyond the sensors, or where we don't have the sensors at a certain point in time. My understanding this is an annualised, or if the sensors were in for 6 months, an average across that 6-month window as well.
You're done? Councillor Gates, I'll take final comments from
Okay,
Councillor
thank you.
Gates.
Okay, I heard you when you said Foxville wasn't included because part of it's main, but why wasn't it included then in the main road information, given we already knew that it had approximately 44,000 vehicle movements a day at the last report, and the travel times on that are, as I'm sure you know, Matt, I'm not telling you anything you don't know because you lived out there, but is the information that we've got before us based on only the roads in those two lists, like the TMR roads, which Foxville isn't one of them, and the local roads, and then all of the bar charts and what have you? Is that based on those roads alone and doesn't include Foxville at all? It hasn't been taken into account in the preparation, this state of the transport network?
Through Madam Chair, we don't have TMR data for Foxville Road. We don't have 2022 data from TMR at the moment, Councillor. So what I can do, as I think I mentioned before, we can have a look at the 2021 data for Foxville Road. It's probably what we reported last year. We can derive or extrapolate some data for 2022 from what we do have access to through our network intelligence system. And I can shoot yourself some information about that.
So I'm struggling to understand why there's no 22 data. Is it because there's no signals other than at Oakey Creek Road on Foxville Road? Like, how does that compare with other roads where there is data? I just can't understand when it's the second busiest road in the city.
So primary source of data is the traffic signal network. We do get a lot of information from streams and from our Bluetooth system. You're right, to the east of the now state-controlled road, Oakey Creek Road is the only signalised intersection. As you know, we're about to, in the process of upgrading a few of the other intersections along the corridor. We will become more data rich along that corridor there. We can, I'm sure we can interrogate the One Network system to look at some of the intersections around Coomera Town Centre that are signalised for 2022. And I can certainly provide that information. It wasn't consciously omitted. If there's any insinuation there,
No, I'm not insinuating anything. I'm just disappointed if the data that's been used to form this information has excluded the second busiest road in the city. It's nonsense. It doesn't reflect the true situation if all of that information's excluded from this report. That's my concern, that we're not getting a true reflection of everything if it hasn't been taken into account, that's all. And if that's not a correct assumption, then I stand corrected. But From where I sit, I feel like it's just been left out of the information before us today.
Through Madam Chair, it's not in the information today. Like I said, I can certainly commit to providing some information east of Shepherd Drive and Finnegan Way there. It is still a busy road, as I know personally, as you infer, Councillor Gates. Let me get some information for you if you don't mind, and we'll see how it sits in comparison to the other parts of the network, but certainly not consciously omitted.
Is it something that's desperately urgent?
Well, it's just related.
Right. Yep.
Just on through you, Madam Chair, on the changes to the roads, change of usage, what's the purpose of showing us that data? So, for example, Wardour Street going up 10%. I only ask because I'm quite sure with Wardour Street going up, it would be because of the work on, I mean, I know I'm using Wardour Street a lot more in the last year because of the construction work on Cotley Street. So that would be temporary, and once Cotley Street's fixed, I don't know whether the same amount of usage would be. So just wondering what was the purpose of sharing the changing growth in the traffic volumes?
Through you, Madam Chair, multiple purposes. I guess exactly as described there, Councillor Patterson. Sometimes there is a redistribution of the network, rapid growth in a 12-month period as a result of network changes, be them temporary or permanent. Sometimes it's because of redistribution because of levels of congestion in certain parts of the network where a link might reach saturation point where there is a natural redistribution along a lower order road than a state road. That's where we get some rapid growth in some of our roads as a result of saturation. Smith Street motorway, for example, when that reaches saturation point, we do get a redistribution along part of our local network and other parts of the state network. So multiple reasons. I guess it's to provide commentary on what it looks like and why, and what the contributing factors are there. Some of it's down to, like I said, temporary factors like construction either there or nearby. Some of it's as a result of more permanent matters such as saturation of the motorway or of a major arterial road in the network as well. So it's just provide a snapshot in a 12-month window as we do each year. There has been this amount of growth or reduction, and to provide a bit of commentary around that.
If I can just quickly add, thank you, just as a final thought for you, Madam Chair. So obviously the State of the Network report continues to evolve. There is definitely more data. The Network Intelligent team underneath Alison do an amazing job of trying to put it together. Certainly, along with the feedback we received today, happy to take any other feedback if you want to contact me, and we'll start to continue to put that in there. I do think there's a little bit of a trial and error about what is useful and insightful to councillors. So the more feedback we get, the more improvements we can make. Certainly take Councillor Gates' point, we should make sure that we are including the busiest roads as part of that. And as we move into the second report for the transport strategy, we'll obviously also align these metrics to the things that are coming through the strategy as being important. So there will be that alignment through there as well.
Thanks, Kath, and thanks, Matt, for your and the team for a great report. The council's recommendation is to note the contents of the report. If I can have someone to move that. Councillor Patterson, seconded by Councillor Taylor. All those in favour? That's carried. Thank you. Item 6.6, which is our Gold Coast City Transport Engagement Feedback Summary. And I imagine, Matt, that you're reporting on that. Are you doing, or 6.6?
I think we've heard enough of my voice to know.
Yes.
I'll introduce Nick Prasser. I think most of you know Nick. He's got a short presentation to complement the report. So thank you, councillors. I'll hand over to Nick.
Thanks, Matt. Welcome, Nick.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks, committee. Thanks, Madam Chair. This is a agenda item reporting back a summary of the recent citywide community engagement that was undertaken for the development of the new transport strategy for the city. Back in October 21, Council noted that we had commenced the development of this new strategy, and in June 22, council endorsed undertaking the citywide engagement, as well as a conversation paper, which form part of the collateral for the engagement, and also recommended that we report back an interim report, hence the reason why we're here today. So the objectives of the citywide community engagement was to validate the city's thinking about Gold Coast's current and future transport challenges, and to inform our the structure and the policy framework for the strategy. So the engagement was undertaken in July and August. It included a conservation paper, a number of videos which you saw, and a whole heap of other collateral. It included online surveys and 13 pop-up sessions which occurred across the city. Just like to thank the councils for their participation in those pop-up sessions. It also included the Mayor did a media launch on that. There were a number of articles in the Gold Coast Bulletin, and there was radio and digital advertising to draw people's attention to the consultation. So the outcome? So overall, it was actually quite a positive experience. The survey received 4,333 responses. So our goal was to hit 800. 800 is sort of the sweet spot, as we say, for a good sample size for the Gold Coast. So we were very, very pleased with the response we got through the survey. We also had over 1,000 face-to-face conversations at the pop-up sessions. I was involved with them, Matt was involved with them, where we actually got to speak to a wide variety of people. The pop-up sessions were at shopping centres, they're at foreshores, they're at markets, they're at parklands, and we had some really, really good conversations with a wide range of people. But overall, the sentiment was quite positive about the Gold Coast in general, and we got a lot of conversations about why they lived on the Gold Coast. It was very, very positive. Just some of the feedback, and we're just summarising the feedback that we're getting. What we plan on doing is we're going to do a lot more diagnostics on the feedback. We've got so much data now that we're going to actually prepare what we call a dashboard, where we can actually sieve the data into different categories, such as suburb or geography. We can do it by demographic, we can do it by mode, and we will be presenting that to councils in upcoming workshop, probably around about the May period next year. But what the community was telling us that the top transport challenges was car dependency, multi-centred city, so the Gold Coast is a polycentric city, and the cost of living. We're all being hit by the cost of living at the moment with petrol prices and mortgage rates and things like that. The feedback we got about from the community about their barriers about using sustainable transport modes. So the biggest barrier for public transport was frequency, coverage and travel time. We pretty much we already sort of knew that if you don't have good frequency and good coverage, and if it's not comparable to other modes in terms of travel time, people just aren't going to use it. Cycling, the barrier for cycling was safety. A lot of people don't. The barrier for cycling was actually mixing with traffic. Barrier for walking was actually distance, and the barrier for retiming trips was actually fixed work and school times. The top solutions that the community told us about was better public transport was number one. People said that they would use public transport a lot more. It was actually meaningful to them. We did get a lot of feedback about more roads, not just more roads, but better roads and more livable and local neighbourhoods. So people said that they would like that 10-minute neighbourhood concept where all their daily neighbourhood needs are served within their neighbourhoods. At the pop-up sessions, there was a considerable focus on short-term geographic frustrations. There was not a lot of interest about citywide, longer-term technology type of issues. We got a lot of feedback about their current frustrations. What are they experiencing now as part of their daily lives? There were some recurring themes around traffic congestion management and better public transport. Some of the more geographic specific feedback we got, a lot of feedback about congestion on the M1 and the interchanges. We all know north of the city, the interchanges there are causing a lot of frustration to motorists. Obviously what's happening to the south on the M1 with under constructions, a lot of frustration to road users. We got a lot of feedback about the M1 being a barrier, particularly for east-west trips. So they're suggesting we actually need some more cross routes, not only for motor vehicles, but for buses, for walking and cycling. We got a lot of feedback about a number of intersections across the city under considerable pressure, particularly along east-west state roads, such as Hope Island Road and Southport Nerang Road. Southport Burleigh Road, which is the main north-south arterial through the city, is also under considerable pressure, particularly for right turn movements, people having problems turning right at a number of the intersections along there. And a big lot of feedback about some of the issues that are happening in Robina, Coomera and Pimpamar. And you only have to look at our LGIP and our investment program that Robina and Coomera and Pimpamar are our big investment focus areas moving forward in the next 5 to 10 years. There was a lot of feedback about continued need for road network development, particularly in terms of safety and capacity, but also a lot of feedback about can we optimise signal timing, and they need better guidance, not only direction signs, but digital guidance as well. Gold Coast Light Rail, so we received overall positivity, both about the existing service. A lot of people gave us really good feedback about the existing service and how much they like it. And there was also a lot of positivity about the planned expansion south. We also got a lot of feedback from the community saying, why can't we expand it to Coomera? It should be expanded to Robina. So that's part of the thinking about where the light rail can go, particularly east-west links out to Robina. We got a lot of feedback, as we expected, about the meagre bus services in the northern suburbs, and we're addressing that through our Northern Gold Coast Bus Service Initiative. The two-hourly bus service does not cut it for Australia's highest growth area. And we knew that, but this confirms it. There is a lack of public transport west of the M1. That's the feedback that a lot of councils are getting, that there is just no public transport at all. So we'll be looking at that. Walking facilities, they said that there was a big need for improved walking facilities to key destinations, particularly wider paths, but also the experience about shade and lighting, personal safety, things like that. And as I said before about cycling infrastructure, better connectivity, but also separating cycling infrastructure from traffic. So people saying they're reluctant to cycle and use bicycle lanes on the road because of the interaction with traffic. So the overall sentiment from the community pretty much validates all our previous thinking, but it does highlight the strategy needs to propose a placed specific approach. Okay, so we can't cut the cloth that suits the whole city. We know that the issues that are happening in the north are different to things that are happening in Surfers Paradise and Broadbeach, different to what's happening in the central suburbs, different to the west, different to the south. So we'll be looking at how we frame up the strategy through the upcoming councillor workshops in March about how the look and feel and the structure of the strategy and what's the policy framework for the strategy. So moving forward, so with the integrated planning framework that council noted back in May, there is now no need to do any consultation on draft strategies. So what we're planning on doing is now going into phase 5, where we will now produce the strategy, and that will include further engagement with the councillors through a number of avenues, workshops, face-to-face briefing sessions and information sessions, and also provision of the draft strategy before it gets reported to council. And this is all going to happen in 2023, and we're aiming to have the strategy finalised and launched in late 2023. there we go. As I've mentioned before, we will be doing a lot more diagnostics on the data we've received. We've got so much data. We want to put it into that dashboard where we can actually, at the workshop, drill down into your specific divisions in a lot more detail and be able to answer some of the questions you have. That's it, Madam Chair.
Thanks, Nick. Appreciate that. We're just going to go to Councillor Owen.
Thank you. So this is community engagement regarding the draft transport strategy. Will there be another round of community engagement regarding a final strategy?
Through you, Madam Chair. So from an integrated planning framework, I think it's probably more sort of the language we're using. So from a strategic perspective, Council has essentially created its new council plan. So the strategy for the city has been outlined for the next 5 to 10 years. There will be targeted stakeholder engagement, including the community, on the draft strategy, absolutely.
Okay. I'd be interested. I think that there's a benefit in circulating the results of this data to other levels of government as well, because clearly we've all got a shared responsibility in regards to the delivery of transport outcomes, and for the city to have this great information and not share it, I think that, and so the question is this the time to circulate the results of the engagement, or at a later date?
Through you, Madam Chair. Thanks, Nick. Councillor Jones, we have the Department of Transport Main Roads on our steering committee for the session, for the project, I should say. We have worked through them, some of the early findings of the consultation, including things like the M1 frustrations, public transport and whatnot, the things that are highly relevant to them. You're right, though, and I think, as Cathal just alluded to, the time is right to share some of the, can I say, this headline information, and as we work through the granular diagnostic of the information as well, absolutely it's time to engage, have below-the-line engagement with certain parts of the department and other stakeholders around their responsibilities to contribute to the transport strategy in those spaces.
And I see there's being a strong benefit in there being an officer-to-officer approach. I'm just wondering whether or not this is actually one of the things where it would benefit the city if we were to circulate the results of the report to the elected representatives of the two higher levels. And so, and the real question is it premature to do that because of the other phases we're going through? But we're going to have a council law workshop. I see things around the feedback that we've got from 4,000 odd people in regards to light rail, for example, and that's a substantial group of people that have provided feedback, and it's been pretty positive. So I think that it's a useful thing. So I was going to suggest that we alter the recommendation. So, but when we get there, I'm happy to talk about it.
So through you, Madam Chair, so obviously we went through the standard community engagement process, so the information goes back via the Have You Say component of the website, so the actual report in terms of the summary goes back on there, and that's published for everybody to see. And then Matt and I have been meeting with our counterparts in TMR in terms of that One Network partnership and strengthening that. I have to say, as the newbie, the officers are working really well together at that level to start to think about that. Ultimately, the new transport strategy needs that partnership to be successful.
Councillors, are there any other questions, or will I go back to Councillor Owen Jones too? Just in 1 minute, Death. Once we're done with Councillor McDonald, I'll go back to Councillor Owen Jones for a suggested changed recommendation.
So I was going to add 4, that the community engagement results report Sandy, you ready? Results report be circulated by the Mayor to the city's state and federal members of Parliament. And look, we've got some really, I know that we've got some really good state advocates for things like light rail. So in the north, I know that Sam O'Connor and Rob Mulhawk have always been pretty positive about light rail. So I just think that providing them with information from the residents of the Gold Coast might collectively help sharpen their views in regards to what the city needs.
Thanks, Councillor Owen-Jones. I'll just go to Councillor McDonald.
The community engagement report, no, the community engagement results report.
Results, yeah.
Results report, which is what it's called, be circulated by the Mayor to the city's state and federal members of Parliament.
Small c.
Thanks, Councillor Owen-Jones. You have a question, Councillor McDonald?
Yeah, just a question. I noticed here where it was asked about, you know, the form of communication, and the highest percentage was people preferred the face-to-face, you know, communication. With those pop-ups, with the 50 questions or whatever it is, you know, did people sit down and do the 50 questions?
Through Madam Chair, there was a combination. What we did, Councillor McDonald, was provide a variety of ways in which people could provide input, one of which was what we called the long survey, as Nick reported on the figures there, which was a 50 question. We gave the people the opportunity within the 50 questions to answer some of the 50 if they only wanted to. Some of the face-to-face, the rapid survey, which a lot of us did when we were manning the stands, was to ask people three short, sharp questions. So we tried to give people a 5-minute engagement option, or it might have been 10 to 30-minute engagement options that they could have done in their own time. So some people filled in the majority of the 50 questions there and then. Some people chose to provide verbal responses, which we recorded using our mobile devices, and then submitted on their behalf with their blessing, so that they captured what was their biggest, I think, challenge using the system, the biggest opportunity, and where they saw the future of transport on the Gold Coast. So it was a shorthand, rapid survey, if you like. So there was various mechanisms that people could have provided input through the process, but a lot of people did fill in a large proportion of the 50 questions. That metric was probably a lot higher than what we'd hoped. We aimed high, and we got a lot higher than that through the interest of the community.
Mm-hmm. Do we have those figures of who filled in the long survey to the short survey?
I think that was on one of the slides. So I think there was 4,300 long surveys filled in. I think that was one of the slides that Nick showed. I think it's in the report.
4,333 people filled out the long survey.
Thank you.
That answers your question, Councillor McDonald? Yeah. All right. Councillors, we've got a change recommendation up there on the screen with the addition of number 4. If there's no commentary on that, we can take it to the vote. Moved by... Was there a question?
Yeah, specifically.
Sorry,
Yes.
Councillor Young was being funny.
Was being
So-
cheeky, yes.
But this is a little bit like Councillor Hamill's conversation earlier about Councillor Young addressing Councillor Young before
Yes.
crossing to Councillor Young.
So let's move by Councillor Patterson, seconded by Councillor Peter Young. All those in favour? That's carried. Thank you, councillors. That's 6.6. We're going on to 6.7 now, and we're going to invite Scott Gillies to join us. It's the World Surfing Reserve Local Stewardship Committee Annual Report. This is the first time I believe that Scott's presented at council, so if we can go gently.
That's exactly what you want to do.
Welcome, Scott.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for the introduction, and thanks for the opportunity to present on the World Surfing Reserve Local Stewardship Committee Annual Report. The purpose of this report is to present the meeting minutes and recommendations from the recent World Surfing Reserve Local Stewardship Committee meeting held on 16th of August this year. And secondly, to seek Council's endorsement to submit the Gold Coast World Surfing Reserve Local Stewardship Committee annual report to Save the Waves Coalition. I'd just like to provide some brief context around why we send that report to Save the Waves. The World Surfing Reserve is an initiative of a non-for-profit organisation called Save the Waves, and a requirement for all World Surfing Reserve dedications is the development of a local stewardship committee and a site-specific stewardship plan. The Gold Coast World Surfing Reserve Local Stewardship Committee's terms of reference states that the city's surf management plan acts as a stewardship plan for the World Surfing Reserve. As part of the World Surfing Reserve governance process, the Gold Coast World Surfing Reserve Local Stewardship Committee is required to table and submit an annual report to Save the Waves Coalition. The report essentially is an update on progress of the surf management plan and implementation of the objective outcomes of the surf management plan. I'm pleased to report that we've had a positive and productive year implementing those objective outcomes from the surf management plan. Two main bodies of work that we've been implementing over the past 12 months is the development of surf safety and etiquette content named Good Surfer, and we've been progressing the city's 5-year review of the surf management plan. I know that at a recent committee meeting, we presented the first 4 videos from that surf safety and etiquette content. We have the final 3 videos available today for presentation should the committee wish to view them.
Yes, we would like to view them.
Choosing a surfing location that matches your ability helps to keep everyone safe. Surf lessons can help you develop ocean skills and boost your confidence. Be a good surfer, always observe conditions, and if in doubt, don't paddle out. Always be aware of your position in the lineup. The surfer closest to the peak has right of way. Communicate clearly with other surfers and only take off if it's safe to do so. Be a good surfer. Share waves, smiles, and good vibes. Safe operation of personal watercraft is paramount. Vessel masters must always give way to other ocean users in the surf zone. Be a good tow surfer. Stay aware and keep your distance.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That's it from me.
Councillors, any questions at all for Scott?
Scott, could you send us your link for your Movember, because that's outstanding work.
Through you, Madam Chair, I'm a bit of a fraud. I don't have a link, and my donations to date are 0. But I can definitely send you a link, get one established, and send that through.
Scott will be a member of the City Movember team by the end of the day, Councillor.
All right, councillors, if there's no questions, if I could have someone to move that today, please. Move the recommendation. Councillor Peter Young, seconded by Councillor Taylor. All those in favour? That is carried. Thank you, Scott. That wasn't too painful, was it?
No, that was great. Thanks so much.
All right,
Cheers.
thank you. Councillors, we've got one more item on today's agenda. I'm not sure, I haven't received any general business items. This one's on grey paper. And is, if there's any questions that need to be asked. I believe we need to go into close for local government budget reasons. Happy to go into closed. If anyone want to move us into closed, Councillor Owen Jones, seconded by Councillor Darren Taylor. All those in favour? That is carried. we just go, did you want to do that in open? All those in favour?
Yeah.
We're now back into open. Councillors, we've had a lengthy discussion about our extractive industries program, differential rate levy. Several questions were asked. I'll go to Councillor Owen-Jones. Councillor Owen-Jones, happy to move it, seconded by Councillor Peter Young. All those councillors in favour? It's carried unanimously. Would you like to speak to it? No. You're messing around with me now. So, did we want to invite Councillor? Yeah. No, she's not on the committee. Yeah. Councillors, that's our last agenda item today. I haven't received any general business items, so I'm at... Yes, yep. Okay. So that's the end of all of our general items today. That's our final meeting for the year. On behalf of myself and the Deputy Chair, we'd just like to thank everyone for very healthy and robust participation in all the meetings. It's been a year of change, and I believe with the Acting Director and all of our officers, they've adapted well and continued the very important programming of transport and infrastructure for the city. And just like to, on behalf of myself as well, say thank you to everyone always for your patience in this room and always the respect that you show for each other's differing opinions. So wishing you all the best for 2022 celebration time, and we'll be back here in 2023. Meeting closed 3:14.